On June of 1993, two girls, Jennifer Ertman and Elizabeth Pena, were taking a shortcut through a park in Houston, Texas, when they were accosted, attacked, and violently raped and killed by a group of 6 gang members. Both Ertman and Pena were also beaten, strangled, and then their throats were caved in by the gang. The murders horrified the community, and many of the gang members were sentenced to death for their crimes. The brutal murders of the girls, having occurred during the height of the American crime wave in the 1990s and furthering Americans' perception of violent crime throughout the country. This is the story of the murders of Jennifer Ertman and Elizabeth Pena. Founded in 1837, the city of Houston, Texas started off as a small, isolated trading center. The city was the capital of what was then known as the Republic of Texas, a breakaway state during the Mexican-American War of the 1840s. The settlement was named after Sam Houston, an American military general and statesman who fiercely advocated for Texan independence during the war and served as the president of the Republic of Texas. During the American Civil War, Texas seceded from the United States in 1861, and Houston became a military logistics center. Houston would be located in what is now Harris County, named after an early Texas settler. Following the Civil War and a devastating hurricane that hit the nearby city of Galveston, the city's population was around 60,000 people. As the oil industry began to take shape, the city ballooned massively in size and population. During the beginnings of the 20th century, Houston became a mecca for manufacturing, research, development, and entertainment. The Houston Astrodome, a sports stadium, opened in 1965 and could seat nearly 70,000 people. As the American space program took off, Houston is home to the Johnson Space Center, in which houses NASA's Command and Control Center called Mission Control, which monitors America's space missions. As Houston grew, so did its population. By 1980, the population of Houston was over 1 million people. Of these 1 million were 2 girls, Jennifer Ertman and Elizabeth Pena. Jennifer Louise Ertman was born on August 15, 1978 in Houston, Texas. Just a year before, in 1977, Elizabeth Christine Pena was born on June 21st. The two girls soon became close friends and inseparable. The two girls went to Waltrip High School. There, classmates also described how close the girls were to each other. When not at school, the girls hung out and did typical teenage activities. By 1993, the population of Houston, Texas was around 2 million residents. Also during this time, the United States was at the peak of a severe crime wave that began in the 1970s. With the introduction of the 24-hour news cycle and a large collection of high-profile killings and crimes stoked fear in the minds of many Americans. Most of these crimes were from gangs fighting in major cities over territory and drugs. On June 25, 1993, 15-year-old Jennifer Ertman asked her father, Randy Ertman, if she could go to a pool party with Elizabeth Pena. Randy agreed, and at 4:15 p.m., drove Ertman over to Pena's house. The two girls got ready for the party, and at 8 o'clock p.m., Elizabeth's mother, Melissa Pena, then drove the two girls to a party at an apartment complex nearby. The pool party was hosted by a friend named Gina. The girls were told to return home by 11:30 p.m. due to their curfew. The pool party lasted all night, and Jennifer and Elizabeth decided to leave early to make it home before the curfew. Elizabeth Pena lived in a residential neighborhood called Oak Forest, which contains a sprawling apartment and housing complex with a population of over 5,000 residents. In order to get home faster, Ertman and Pena decided to take a shortcut through an area called J.C. Jester Park. The park was located near a waterway called White Oak Bayou and a railroad bridge. The area consisted of wooded areas along with open fields of grass. Unbeknownst to the two girls, a gang initiation was taking place nearby. A gang initiation is a ritual in which a newcomer to a gang must prove their worth by committing a certain criminal act, whether it's petty theft to murder. 6 men, Peter Cantu, Jose Medellin, Venecino Medellin, Sheen Derrick O'Brien, Efren Perez, and Raul Villarreal, At 14, Venacino Medellin was the youngest of the group, and Raul wanted to join the gang. Peter Cantu, being the ringleader of the group, ordered Raul to fight the other men. The time was 10:30 p.m. 40 minutes later, Jennifer Ertman and Elizabeth Pena walked into the area where the gang initiation was taking place. The two girls tried to ignore the men, but were either heckled by the group or catcalled by the men. Jose Medellin then walked up to Pena and groped her breasts, in which she pushed him away. "No, baby, where are you going?" Jose said as he dragged Pena towards the other gang members. Jennifer Ertman tried to fight off Jose, but she was quickly attacked and subdued by the other gang members. Both Ertman and Pena were forced to strip off their clothing and appear nude in front of the men. The men then took turns raping the girls anally, vaginally, and orally. Both girls tried to fight back but were weakened by their rapes and wounds. Both girls bit and kicked at the men, but to no avail. Both girls cried aloud as they were attacked. Cantu then decided to kill the girls to avoid them from identifying them later. Raul Villarreal then went first. "Get on your knees, bitch," he said to Ertman. Both Villarreal and O'Brien then proceeded to strangle Ertman to death with a red nylon belt until it broke. The other men forced Elizabeth Pena to watch the death of her best friend before she too would be killed. At one point, Elizabeth pleaded for mercy by exchanging her phone number and making romantic overtures in exchange for her life. Cantu and the others refused and then began to brutally beat and kick Pena, causing multiple fractures in her ribs and knocked out all her teeth. Cantu and Efren then repeatedly stomped on the girls' throats to crush their voice box and larynx. This was after both girls were strangled with multiple shoelaces. The gang then hid the mutilated bodies and left the scene. Cantu stole a Disney Goofy wristwatch that had belonged to Ertman and handed it to Venacino. "Take this. I don't want it." With the exception of O'Brien, the other gang members then went back home to Cantu's house and bragged about their crimes. They also took items from the girls and divided them up amongst themselves. Cantu's sister-in-law, Christina Cantu, noticed large amounts of blood on both Paul Cantu and Efren Perez. Christina asked what happened, and Paul said that the men had had fun and told Christina to watch the news. Christina then asked Paul's brother, Joe Cantu, to contact the authorities. When Ertman and Pena were overdue on their curfew, both of the girls' parents launched a frantic search for them, along with the rest of the community, but Jennifer Ertman and Elizabeth Pena were nowhere to be found. Then, on June 28, 1993, the badly decomposed bodies of both Jennifer Ertman and Elizabeth Pena were found in T.C. Jester Park. Randy Ertman had to be restrained by the crowd as he had become hysterical at the sight of his dead daughter. In the search party was Sheen Derek O'Brien, one of the murderers. Following Joe Cantu's tip to the police, all the men in the gang were arrested and tried and convicted for the murders of Jennifer Ertman and Elizabeth Pena. Due to the absolute brutality and horror of the crime, Cantu, O'Brien, Perez, Villarreal, and Jose Medellin were all given death sentences. However, Villarreal and Perez's death sentence were later reduced to life in prison due to the fact that they were minors when they committed the crime. Sheen O'Brien and Jose Medellin were put to death in 2006 and 2008 respectively. Peter Cantu was executed in 2010, almost 16 years after the murders and longer than the lifespans of his victims. Randy Ertman, father of Jennifer Ertman, expressed deep hatred towards Cantu. He should have been hung from a tree outside the courthouse. I don't mean this in a gruesome way, but if they want to make the death penalty a deterrent, we have a lot of good trees up here in Houston. If we all hung all 5 of them, that would be a deterrent. In the end, Peter Cantu showed some remorse for his crimes, and the heroics of Elizabeth Pena trying to defend Jennifer Ertman from their attackers was commended. In the aftermath, this case changed Texas judicial procedure in which family members could view executions. The horrors of the murders shook the community of Oak Forest to its core. Both Ed and Waltrip High School created memorials to commemorate the girls. 2 memorial park benches are located near T.C. Jester Park, and next to that are the burial sites of the 2 girls.